Good evening, everyone. If you can just do a thumbs up either in real time or on the computer to let us know that you can hear us okay, that would be very helpful. Thumbs up, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nagara Kadumu. I am the curator here at the Center on Contemporary Art in Seattle, and it is my very great pleasure to host this talk this evening with our current exhibiting artist, Rajaa Gharbi, in connection with her exhibition Tell More 2, which is on view through October 30th. It has been a pleasure working with Rajaa during this experience of organizing the show, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak with her in your presence this evening. Just the housekeeping rules, we have a small in-person audience, and then of course we have you, the virtual audience. We will spend about 40 minutes in discussion, and then we will leave the rest of the time for your questions. We ask you to be prepared to put your questions in the chat, and we will try to cover as many questions as we have time for, in addition to questions from our in real life guests here in the gallery before we end this evening. So just wanted to let you know that before we get started. And so we're going to jump right in. I think to get us started, to launch our conversation this evening, Rajaa, if you could just introduce yourselves for our guests here this evening.
Rajaa Gharbi, thank you very much for being here. Thank you, Nagara, for curating the show, for the invitation. And I want to thank the Center on Contemporary Art here in Seattle for the invitation as well. And let's have a conversation.
Yeah, so I want to start off with the title. The title of this exhibition is Tell More 2, and so obviously that presumes that there was a first version. And so if you could share with us the first, a sort of a summary, perhaps, of the first version and how you sort of got on the trajectory towards the second iteration of it.
Yeah, oh, I forgot to thank our guests who are here.
Yes.
Seattle is not an easy place to drive, and it's traffic time right now. So thank you very much for being here, for making it. So how did the first Tell Me More?
Yes.
Merge into the second?
Merge into the second one.
Yes.
Which is what we have here.
So the first one, it's actually a series of 3 Tell Me More, and let me make this very. It's not a correction; it's a little comment. So the actual title is Tell Me More, and I was very happy for the mistake, and stopped thinking that it was a mistake. Perhaps it was a conscious choice to eliminate the me. However, I will keep it in the next exhibition, not as the me who is who thinks that, which has never been the case for me, is like the planet turns around, the acts of the planet, and the planet turns around them. But as the me, the child, who is really curious and wants to be there, wants to know more. And that's what the Tell Me More is going to be reinserted in the next show.
Yes,
but in this one, thank you, I like it.
Okay.
So the first Tell Me More was based on a made up, if you will, a creative writing piece, which is a conversation with what I have come to learn, that actually the father, since there are fathers and mothers in the art, the father of contemporary art, or a large part of it as we know it, is actually not Kandinsky of abstraction, it's Pavel Filonov. And I had been studying his work for 2-3 years, only because, or especially because he was really my studio companion, if you will, for many reasons. So I went to Russia and I started working on an exhibition that I wanted to actually, where I wanted to actually bring some of his work, and the work, and the exhibition was intended for a museum. And I wanted my a series of my paintings to be to enter into conversation with his.
Mhm.
But so as to bring another or try to bring another dimension of contemporary art to the United States.
Mhm.
So the first exhibition didn't happen as I wished it, but it did happen
Mhm.
here in downtown Seattle, and it was Tell Me More, and it was a conversation with Pablo Pilano that I had that I created in order to introduce his work to the United States as a companion for me. He's dead, but you know, he's been one of my art companions. So this exhibition, like the one before it, is grounded in language, both literal and
So you know, already know what my next question is going to be.
I don't know.
Well, you have an idea.
I
which
do know
is,
from your the
um,
article you wrote, the review you wrote.
with the language piece is is aesthetically overt, both visually, but also in the actual looking at actual what I recognize to be Arabic characters in the paintings, but also you really take on, particularly in the installation piece that's included in this exhibition, a critical conceptual analysis about the use of language, how we understand language and geography. And so could you elucidate for us the ways in which language has been sort of its own sort of subset within your practice, but then also its role in this exhibition?
So from almost a strictly technical perspective, most of my paintings, if not all, are made of, their lines are made of letters.
Mm-hmm.
Various languages, but especially Arabic and Tamazight, I should say, and other languages. And I'll start at the beginning, so it's more of a story thing. My first year in school, elementary school, the first or the second week, it was kind of not traumatic, but a shock to the system. And one of the reasons was that my teacher, who was, I'm sure she was wonderful and she loved us all, but I think pedagogically she was new, not formed yet. And so at home, my mother understood that I wanted color all the time. So I had color, I had pencils, I had pens that since I was 3 years old or something like that. And so when the first week of school, we were all supposed to write our names. So I wrote my name, but instead of writing it on the line straight, I wrote it diagonal, and I wrote it with a colored pen. And my teacher, don't bless her memory, she stuck the page on my back, and she made me make the tour of the whole classroom, which had 30 kids. This is a long time ago. And she asked me to keep saying, repeating, and he said to this professor's name, that, you know, I made a mistake, I made a mistake. Oh my gosh, I didn't like that at all. So, you know, fast forward 7 decades later or a few decades later, you know, I realized that actually that's pervasive in most, in many parts of the world. Language is not used as organically as it can be to help people not just acquire knowledge, but enjoy learning. Enjoy learning. So most of the lines that I use are extremely organic, not antithetical to traditional calligraphy, but a stepping aside from the decorative, the beautiful but illegible text. It's also organic because it's an organic experience. It's a call to, I don't know if it's a call even, but it's an exploration of what connects languages. And it does happen always in painting for me. I mean, I do a lot of research, but I don't have a definite message to give to people. It's an invitation. So, for example, the more you look into this, or the more I look anyway, the more you feel more at home almost anywhere in the world. I'll give you one example, which is not necessarily um, one we suspect. I mean, what's the word Amazon? Where does it come from?
Right.
It's Amazigh, right? Amazon, the so-called one-breasted, that's false mythology. The one-breasted women warriors of North Africa. But actually, the word Amazon is the free people of the land, more or less. That's what it means. And it did travel here to the rest of the world. It is Amazigh, and the plural is in New Zealand. And oh, so many examples. You can ask me about any word almost, and oh, there's one that comes to mind also that is we use across the planet pretty much. It's pharmacy, which is pharmaca. It's ancient Egyptian. It's in the hieroglyphs of Egypt all over the place. There's never, I mean, it's not, there's no doubt, there's no controversy about it. Pharmacy is pharmaca, it's an Egyptian, ancient Egyptian word, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot.
Okay, well, we've had some interesting conversations sort of over the course, I think, of us knowing each other, but certainly as it relates to organizing this exhibition about the origin of languages as a part of your research, but also the ways in which languages have been intentionally used, if not manipulated. And so in your decision to use certain letters in certain ways within your paintings, would it be appropriate to say that perhaps you are presenting beyond just an alternative, a counter to what has historically been the use of Arabic language in particular, but also because you work with the language of the Tuareg people as well? What I'm getting at is essentially a lot of what we've discussed in terms of the story, the specific stories that you want to tell using language, using these languages versus the ways in which the methodologies and the purposes for which these languages have, and this is not the best word, but traditionally been used.
So there's a sense of history that is urgently needed, I think, right now by people everywhere. Not a revision of history, but really history. Actually, what what's been happening during the last 6,000-7,000 years instead of just the last 400 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So as you can see in the installation, there is just the elephant head only are painted very roughly, very uncalligraphic, because hopefully it's an invitation for people to explore the idea of the letter itself, which starts so many traditions, including the Quranic tradition, which says, read. Hence the part of the title, the installation's title, read. And I think because we have so many languages in the world that still exist, that have not been eliminated, hopefully they won't, but that is there. Between 6,000 and 7,000 languages are still live in the world. But there's one language that's increasingly dominant, which is English. At the same time, English itself is a compendium of so many other languages. So there's not, I'm not trying to convey a message, I'm trying to invite, I hope, to the exploration of what we have. Just, wherever we're standing, there is an immense richness. And I do suggest storytelling. That's why I suggest the participation by writing something from the languages that we actually do have in the United States. And I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds just in the US alone. But we hear about 2 or 3. So there's a map of American Indian languages. There are maps of all the African languages that exist in the United States that are alive and kicking in the home, in the home. Scandinavian languages, of course, new African alphabets that that are being developed also to create a common thread communication tool between all Africans, most, hopefully all. Let's see, what else? How do the because this is all a visual medium, so I'm finding myself a little bit at loss in terms of the paintings have to be seen, because even though they're made of very abstract letters or lettering, they have to be seen.
Yeah, they're not literary works, obviously.
Nope.
Obviously.
No, these mediums are free. They intermingle completely, and I live them and work with them very organically, but they stand on their own also.
Yeah. Sort of shifting gears more to the visual side of things, or more traditionally understood as visual side of things. Part of my thought process, which you witnessed as I was organizing, selecting the pieces and organizing the exhibition, was there started to just sort of appear in my mind these sort of groupings around color. And so I wanted to know if you could just go into greater detail about, not in terms of trying to match color to the meaning, unless of course that sort of organically happens, but the experience of grouping certain colors together to affect a certain entry point to entice the viewer to pull the viewer in, if you will. And maybe even a combination of colors. I'm thinking particularly here of the ones that are sort of in our behind us, with the blue and the purple and the blue and the violet. Further down, we have sort of blue and the gray as well. And then in front of us, sort of ending with these deeper reds, rust colored, browns, reddish, ruddy colors.
There is reference to which you brought up. I don't know if it was just serendipitous brought up, or you brought up the art, textile arts. So I grew up with that. It's the 60s, the 70s and 80s in Tunisia were glorious, and I hope and I believe that they will become glorious again in terms of textile arts. Tunisia had the very prominent textile industry, and it was qualitatively and quantitatively one of a wonderful one, very, very successful. And that's the new one. So those are industrial, that's the industry of textiles, the contemporary industry. But there's also the so-called traditional textile. I don't know if it was an industry or not, but in the homes, in the tribes, in the cities as well. those are weavings that are heavier, they're ancient, they're not machine made, they're loom. So that was really my first college, if you will, even though I was a very young child, of abstract art. And so how the sparking, how the language thing connects is that I learned. So I walked the streets with my mother for years and years until also my sister grew up, and then we go together through the main arterial avenues, streets of the Medina, the old towns. You've seen them, where bolts of cloth are, spread. And so you have on one avenue, I grew up marveling and swimming in color and shapes with figurative forms on one avenue. On the other avenue, it is completely abstract art, because I think our readings are abstract. I mean, abstraction is not a contemporary thing. It is ancient. It's, most of the African continent has it, still has it. And so does Cubism, by the way, nothing new in it. It's an African art form. It's old as the world. So my palettes are, in part, you asked about these two, they are almost directly inspired by the cloth, the outfit traditional outfit of women in various parts of the country, where the main colors are red and blue, and maybe purple as well. And it's just one piece. It's an insinuation of the whole thing. There, it's a teasing, if you will. It's not the entire thing. The entire thing is gorgeous as well. More. I mean, I hope this is visually pleasing, but I'm talking about real beauty when it's just, in celebrations, when the woman moves, there's it's silk. The best ones are silk, and it's work that's was learned throughout hundreds of years and perfected throughout hundreds of years. So there's always I'm always inspired, and it registers in your genes, what you grew up with, what you learn. It doesn't mean you stay and you stick to the forms that are there and never move or change, but they don't go away.
Certainly. Speaking of stories and history, you told me a really, really great story that I did not know about this structure that is sort of known throughout history, but not known for this bit of history that you shared with me. And so this piece that we have here at the back of the gallery, which is kind of really truly the anchor in many ways of the exhibition, talks about Alhambra.
It's titled Alhambra Afterglow.
Yes. And so if you could share with us, it's I found it to be a very beautiful and very touching story. Others may think what others may think, but I found it to be a very beautiful and resonant story. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing that with us.
So, Alhambra in Spain, all of Andalusia was the glow of light in the world. There's, history is over there to confirm it, to share it, to show it.
And also the site of one of the most significant Islamic caliphates, if I remember
one of the
correctly.
most liberal ones in history.
In history.
Yeah. And lots of translations took place then. The arts thrived like crazy. They were commissioned by the princes and the kings, and it was the confluence of artistic creativity. And at that point, I'm not sure you could actually you could separate what was artistic from what was not, because almost it seemed like everything was done artistically.
Right.
Everyday life seemed to have creativity pushed to as pushed as far as possible. So, but the flip side of glory in general, regardless how great it is, if at some point it, it it gets dominated, colonized, let's use the word, by certain takes on religion, like Andalusia did. Things change. Things change and not usually not for the best, and that's what's happening now in the world, right? I mean, if religion is used by, not in your most artistic ways, it is used by certainly by the United States government to interfere in people's affairs and so on and so forth. We know we're not going to get into the strictly political aspect of things, but within that context, still, the painting has this very small chair, seat. So we have Nun, which stands for Nahnu, us, all of us. That's the dark letter there. But it's a forest. It's for me anyway. It's in motion all the time. It's in motion at several levels, like you see. And the birds there are birds of. We can interpret them in any way we want. They're definitely, they have the color of the fire. They have the color of flames, of the sun, of the movement, of flight, of growth. But there's this little chair in between there that's it's not rooted anywhere. And that's the seat of power that is being that so many hunger for these days. And since empires don't last, and non-creative power doesn't also last, doesn't generate more, more energy, more life nurturing things or experiences, then that seat is small, but the painting is not. The rest, the context is not.
Yeah. No,
I hope not.
No, that's for sure. I think this will be my last question before we open it up to our guests here in the gallery, as well as to our guests virtually. And I think I'm gonna have to get up and go read the title because I don't remember it, but it is, I think, I thought I had favorites before I really got a chance to spend some time with the work, and now I think I have a new favorite, which is the smallest piece in the show. And the title is "I Will Catch You No Matter Which Angle You Fall."
Yeah.
And so that piece has struck me personally, because even though at least on the surface, it seems to have no intentional relationship to sort of what's going on. The title of that currently, sort of our current social environment, the title of that piece resonated very deeply because there's a vulnerability to that, both for the person who is reading it, but both also for whomever it may have been said to. And so I'm curious of the story behind that work.
It's probably the simplest but most fundamental thing. Look at us, the world now. What's needed most is the translation of love into action. You fall, I'll catch you. And well, I wouldn't say unconditionally, because if you have a bazooka or something, K-47 or whatever, the person will have to negotiate. I think there's a chance to negotiate everywhere in any situation, except when the absence of love is total. Then you just, what can you do? You turn your back? and you go where the grass is green. I mean, that's a very simple interpretation of it. I think you understand it. You know, as a curator, that like, the way Herbert Reed put it. Most artists are not necessarily given to explaining everything, being rational about everything they do because hopefully what part of our work is to go so deep into consciousness that we let things flow. We let the interiority of things take place in the world, however small or big or medium sized. And then, I'm very surprised, frequently surprised by visitors, viewers, collectors who read a particular painting, read certain things in a particular painting that might have taken me 2 decades to see, like one aspect or two aspects. So, and that's the playground between curator, view, collector, buyer, artist, children who have contributed so much to this installation last time and this time, and they will continue, because they sit on that table and explore the sandrows and keep writing and draw. I draw so much. It's amazing. Kids 6 and 7. That's on here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Of course. So we're going to open it up now to questions. For those of you all who are joining us virtually, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and I will read them out loud so that everyone can hear. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. And if any of our guests here in the audience have questions, please feel free and I will repeat them so we can make sure everyone can hear. So feel free, don't be shy. We are open to increased conversation. We do want to engage with you about this exhibition and about Rajaa's practice. So please feel free, please.
When you were talking about textiles and looms, it made me think about how when you see a loom, you really get to see the layers of threads that go into a textile, more so than you might think when you just look at the textile alone. And it also made me realize how much, one of the things, many things that I love about your work is the layers and the layering. So I'm going to get up and read the titles too. So birds in an alpha cityscape. One, and then the other is cauldron delights. This one is struck by the layering of like different very different techniques, and then also in the cauldron one specifically, obviously the mixed media use of their cores cracked alive. I don't know exactly.
Olive cores. They're olive cores. Olive
the
pits.
We call the pit.
Yeah.
The pit.
Okay, got it. So I just wanted to see if you would tell me more about tell us more about the layers and those two specifically, and the meaning of those layers, especially as you talk about implicating ourselves in history.
So birds in an alpha cityscapes is part of the series, actually, Cauldron Delight, and there are other paintings, of course, in that series that aren't here because they can't be here. This is the right choice. What we have here. There is a little bit of 18-karat gold in that blue bird. It's kind of a fish or a bird, or this series in particular was started with Ferguson, and we live in Seattle. We know what Dark City looks like. My work is informed usually in part by the place. place is extremely important. That's where we are. We are on planet Earth, so it's going to be informed by that. But this is a very small portion of planet Earth. Is the downtowns of the world where birds are. Like this, there's this child here who wrote something really amazing. She or he wrote a proverb from their, I think it's actually a Filipino proverb, but I'm not sure. Birds were born to fly. This series has the word bird in it, every painting. Birds were born to fly. And so the city has humans. I mean, the bird has always been the metaphor for everything strong and free and all for me. And, since we are still here, I hope so. I often use it to talk about humans, to illustrate humanity. And so, it's, you look at the power. I prefer not to say what what's behind it for me. But so that you can look at the shadows and the lights, the light and shadow in the painting itself, and make up your mind what the shadow and light might mean, what the lines might mean. There are vertical lines, there are horizontal lines, there are water reflections in the same cityscape, and there's something that's growing. It's fire. It's a fire palette. It may be actually fire or not, but it is a fiery palette, and it has green because green is, green is life. It's not to be there forever. Like humanity will, if the earth has to get rid of humanity, it will. But there will always be green. But that's not the point in that painting. It's the other way around. Cauldron Delights, which is the painting over there, is the title of the previous exhibition. It was inspired in part by what's happening in my native country. So the icons there, the cauldron, it's really literally it's the cauldron in which we prepare couscous. And the brazier, the fire that's underneath it, it's the top that women wear in celebrations. Blusa, we say. But it's a blusa that's, I mean, when you wear it, it covers the top of your body. And that's where your heart lies, right? And that's where the breathing happens, because that's where our lungs are. A lot of what's happening in Tunisia and other countries in the world, but since this was really, really inspired, this series of paintings inspired in part by the Tunisian revolution. It is a revolution. I have absolutely no hesitation in calling it so. It is in a great part. It's happening on the shoulders of women. Not inevitably as a burden. These are our lives. It's the country's lives. It's the children. It's the new generation. So the top there is a direct reference to Tunisian women. It's a direct homage. But there's a great fire happening there. But there are those two characters, martial artists who are fighting there too, and there's a forest that's really green, and there are spirits and bodies, and it's full of storytelling. So the olives are what they are, what they symbolize, and also it's the main tree in my native country. It's the main source of food and general production and export, and it's the main source of life for a lot of people. And yeah, that's more than a sales pitch for olives from Tunisia. Thank you.
Please, you had a question.
So I just wanted to say, in general, your paintings carry all the layering. It has a kind of a
calligraphy, sort of abstract movement, the textile that you were mentioning. What about and what are the influences of music? I hear music.
Thank you. Thank you very
I
much.
hear music.
Thank you. So this reminds me of something I was thinking about a few days ago. Something I'm not sure is that hasn't been publicized enough. So when Jimi Hendrix went to North Africa, he played with the Gnawa in particular. He played with musicians from the south of North Africa. He spent quite a while in Morocco. And there's a CD recording of his that's at the public library here in Washington that I came across by chance about 20 years ago. And that it has the recordings, his recordings and texts of his experience in Morocco. When he came back to the United States, that's when his style took a shift. It was a major breakthrough for him. This is not really well publicized, but that's that experience of going home to a specific degree. The home where I grew up, I spent all my life there, and his, as an example, of course, other well-known American musicians, artists. Performed in Carthage, performed in Tunisia. I saw them. I mean, I was there for James Brown. Crazy. I was a kid, really a kid, but that was like, so, it's carried in their genes. It comes from, what they have comes from somewhere that lived for thousands of years. I'm influenced by the same things, especially that I spent all my life, most of it, I still live, part of the year. In Tunisia, in North Africa, and I'm influenced by what's there, and the colors. I was thinking, I have no doubt that he was, he was mesmerized by the colors too, and that's just one example. Now you think of Kandinsky spent quite a while in Tunisia. If we want to look at the Western European, actually, he's not Western European, he's Eastern European, he's Russian. Other big names in the world who have influenced contemporary painting, contemporary fine art. So you look at Moyer, Kandinsky, there's a whole number of them who went to Tunisia, and that's when their work changed completely. And their names are, they're among what we call the darlings of painting. Huge names, huge in the sense that there was let's say that their promotion machine was better than ours, better, stronger, for the obvious reasons. Colonial times in most of the Africans really are behind so much success of, I'm sorry, I'm not, it's, they saw art feeds art. Let's take a few other examples. I think of Le Corbusier, for instance, the big contemporary architect who has his name in architectures all over the Western world. Well, his work was extremely angular, gray. One take, one perspective on architecture. He lived in Morocco for a while, and guess what? Le Corbusier became somebody huge, somebody big. I'm not taking anything away from his personal achievements. I'm just saying that those are the sources where I grew up. I was born and raised, and I still live there part of the year. I go back. My kids are influenced by it. Kandinsky said that this color is it. Color is it. Light is it. The quality of light in Tunisia. They lived in Hammamet, they lived in Susa, they lived in the north. That's what I bathed in that. And it's really, it's crazy. It's crazy. The quality of light is just unbelievable. And, not being chauvinistic, for my native country. So think about Picasso, for instance, you know. I think about Cubism. So Herbert Reed, who was a wonderful art historian from the UK, he lays it out. Picasso studied African sculptures, art, and masks in particular, but not exclusively, just sculpture, African sculpture in general, for 2 years. The first exhibition of Cubist work by Picasso was done immediately after, at the end of those 2 years. He says there's no crime committed there. You know? Art feeds art. Now, I'm allergic to these things, even though I wear it all the time, but not in a closed space. So I apologize. That's fine.
Thank you for that question. That was really great. I appreciate you picking up on that musical thread. We have a few last minutes here. If there's anyone here in the gallery or virtually who would like to ask a question to our artist about the exhibition, about her practice, please feel free to do so. In the meanwhile, I do want to share with you again, the exhibition will be on view 30th. And this talk is being recorded and will be available in the coming weeks on the CoCA YouTube channel. So you will be able to replay it and share it amongst your friends and colleagues who may have missed being here with us this evening. And so again, if there's anyone else with any other questions, virtually or in person, please feel free to share them with us. Thank you for that lovely comment, Carletta. Thank you.
What did you say?
From Carletta, I really appreciated your insights and learning more about the context of your work. From Ravi Khanna, he is so very impressed by Rajaa's many talents, filmmaker, writer, poet, painter, and performer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you so very much. So it seems as if we are wrapping up. Thank you so much to our in-person guests. Thank you to our virtual guests. Again, the exhibition will be on view through October 30th. The hours of the gallery are Thursday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And this public program has been recorded, is being recorded, and will be edited and put onto our CoCA YouTube channel for public viewing. So again, thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Thank you very, very much for coming.